Finding my voice has really been an ongoing journey as I move into new roles or working with a new team or new leadership team. It's how I've been able to choose to show up, and that can evolve throughout your career. And I think people need to know that that's okay, as long as you know you're being authentic to yourself.
Hello, I'm Kerrie Greenfelder, FY27 President of the Society of Women Engineers. Welcome to Global Voices in Engineering. Now, I'm sure you've been listening for a while and just noticed that we have a new name. Diverse is now Global Voices in Engineering. But don't you worry, it is the same award-winning SWE podcast that we know you all love. We've just updated the show's name to capture what SWE and this podcast really is about. It's about bringing together engineering stories from around the world because every engineer has a story. So today we are going to hear from Elissa Lee. Elissa is the Executive Director of Commercial and International Military Rotorcraft Engine Programs and Services at GE Aerospace. But more importantly, Elissa is also our opening keynote speaker at WE26 in Boston, Massachusetts this coming November. So we're going to get to know a little bit about the person behind the keynote. Elissa, thanks for joining us. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Kerrie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be part of the new branded Global Voices in Engineering podcast. And I am even more excited to get to see and meet all of our global SWE members at WE26 when we welcome them to our lovely city of Boston.
Excellent. Well, let's start at the very beginning. I know I want to hear this, but our listeners do more. We want to know a little bit about your journey, maybe what sparked your interest in engineering, and how the heck did you get this title at GE Aerospace? Give it to us.
Yeah, so I would say, like many of us, I always had an affinity to math and science. I mean, even as a kid, I can remember back in third grade even, our teacher would use these multiplication flashcards to play this game called Around the World. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's this game where you kind of go head to head with a classmate who can call out the multiplication answer on the flashcard the fastest. And if you do, then you get to move around the world or around the classroom to the next classmate. And I can actually remember there was this one Friday when we were going around the room and I ended up being matched up against Harry Hogan, who was one of the smartest kids in our class, had always been. And we were so quick at the multiplication that ultimately the teacher said, finally, hey, we're just going to end it at a tie. And I can remember going home and being so happy and pleased that, I told my mom, hey, I think I might be pretty good at this math thing, right? And so even through grade school, always enjoyed the math and the sciences. And then fast forwarding to high school, I had the opportunity to attend a science and technology magnet high school, Thomas Jefferson. And at that school, we had a number of required classes like most high schools, like biology and chemistry and physics, which I enjoyed. But we also had a lot of extended science classes like geology or microbiology, and I enjoyed all of it. And so it was really through all of that, the studies and really enjoying all the sciences and math that I could absorb in all of the schooling that I did, that really cultivated my love for the engineering piece too. Now, I'm at GE Aerospace, as you said, and my title can be long and confusing, but essentially I have responsibility for all of our commercial and international military customers who fly helicopters with our jet engines that power them. So we end up designing, building, and delivering and servicing helicopter engines all around the world. And I never took a class in aeronautics, but when I do think back, my love of aerospace, again, was really cultivated at a younger age in high school. I remember my friends and I, we would always look up in the sky, and one of my friends was a huge plane geek and would always admire the contrails or have us try to guess what kind of plane it was, and that ended up carrying through college. So when I went to college, I did know I wanted to do something in the sciences, but honestly, at that time, I didn't know much about engineering itself as a profession. So learning in college that I could not only enjoy my sciences and math, but be able to apply it to solve real world problems, and that to me was like a dream come true. And so I ended up majoring in material science and engineering at MIT. I was fascinated by learning about all the different materials that are in the world around us, that what we can touch, right? And through college, I did heavily debate pursuing an advanced degree specializing in metallurgy, because that was something that I had grown an affinity for. And that's when I came across GE Aerospace, who had a leadership rotational program that actually had a specialized track for material scientists. Because in our industry, when we're designing jet engines, right, metals, of course, is a big part of what we use to design. But not only that, it's this idea of having to push the metals to the limit in order to optimize the performance of the engine. And that to me was really exciting. And again, it kind of married with my interest in aerospace. And the company was also sponsoring our master's degree in engineering. So all of that was a perfect fit for me. And that's where I ended up starting my career and still am here today.
What a fascinating story. And I know, a lot of engineers talk about, their early love of math and science. And we always hear a bit of a thread about just some of that competitiveness. And, you tell this story about Harry and being competitive with him, but how that really helped take you around the world then in third grade all the way to today. What an exciting journey, Elissa. Thank you for sharing that. So to pivot a little, your WE26 Keynote is about engineering your own soundtrack. And you're going to talk a little bit about using the language of music to share some of your career and life lessons. This is so creative to me. It's something I don't think we've brought to SWE, at least in my history. And so maybe tell us a little bit about, the role music has played in your life and your career, but no spoilers for your keynote.
Yeah. So, clearly I've always had an affinity and enjoy the sciences and in technologies, but my true passion has always been music. Right? It's just something that's been part of my life since I was a baby, learning instruments, exploring different styles of music, getting to arrange music or direct music in college, even had the opportunity to bring an a cappella group that I was directing to New York for the national championships at Carnegie Hall. What a dream. And so there was even a moment in time where I wanted to major in music in college, to be honest with you. But as a second generation family, my reality was that my parents wouldn't support my pursuing a music major in college. So I did the next best thing. I found a way to bridge my love of science and math into engineering and help solve these problems in the world. And I minored in music performance. So it's always been part of my life, even in college. I can remember it was always a relief valve for me in a lot of ways. What I often say when I talk about what music means to me, I love working with my team and my customers on exciting technologies, and that's what fills me up every day. That's what gets me out of bed every morning. Yet I need music to fill my soul. I've continued to immerse myself in music. In fact, just in the last couple of years, I've picked up learning new instruments in styles that I'd never listened to. So I picked up the fiddle, which is the same as a violin, let's say, but it's played in bluegrass music. And so I've been listening to those new genres like bluegrass and roots music, exploring neo soul with my bass guitar. So just continuing to find ways to explore and learn about new music, which for me has been a way to challenge myself even outside of the day-to-day work. Right, and find new ways to experiment and feel fulfillment in different ways in my life.
Oh, I love this. And I have to ask, you said you picked up a new instrument in the fiddle. How many instruments can you play?
Well, I think some people might say my playing is not quote unquote the play performance level, but let's say today I do play the guitar, the bass, the fiddle. Piano is my prime music. I spent a good number of years playing the clarinet, through grade school and high school and a bit in college. And then also did vocal studying as well, which is part of my music journey, being part of the a cappella group at MIT called the Corollaries of MIT, and having a wondrous time doing that, and also had a lot of classical vocal training too.
Elissa, you are a fascinating individual, and I already can't wait for your keynote. So I'll keep us moving along here, but I still want to stick a bit to your music theme here and maybe talk a little bit about where in your career did you find your voice? And by that, I mean, maybe you had to speak up or take a risk or trust yourself in a new or different way. Any stories or examples you want to share with us?
Yeah, gosh, that's a really great question, Kerrie. I'd say finding my voice has really been an ongoing journey in a lot of ways, right? I mean, as I move into new roles or working with a new team or a new leadership team, it's how I've been able to choose to show up, right? And that can evolve throughout your career. And I think people need to know that that's okay, as long as you know you're being authentic to yourself. There's one example I'll share. I can recall when I was early in my career, I had recently moved into a new role where I was now attending leadership reviews regularly. I wasn't the one who was normally presenting. I was attending in more of a support role. And I can recall one of my mentors, her name was Maria Deacon. She was a fabulous leader. She was the site leader of our whole organization. And she was very charismatic and energizing as our site leader. And I had met with her on a quarterly basis just as a mentor. And at one point in time, because she was participating in these leadership reviews, often being the one who was being presented to, she came to me and said, Elissa, you realize when you speak, people listen because your points are clear and it's needed and it's impactful. But you need to speak up more, honey, is what she said. I can remember at that time it was difficult for me to hear that feedback because what I initially felt like she was saying was, you need to be more like me, because she was the one, right, who was very verbose and illustrative in her words and would be speaking up a lot in these meetings. And I felt like what she was telling me is that I was too quiet or I wasn't edgy enough, right? But when I took a step back to reflect on it, I realized that honestly, her feedback to me was a positive. She was encouraging me to trust myself more, to share my views or perspectives more actively, not change who I am, right? Not try to be someone else, but to give myself permission to be more of myself and be present in that room. So I gave myself a challenge for the next 30 days. I said, can I actually be the one to have the courage to speak first in these meetings, right? Share my view or ask a question. And at that time in my career, that was not comfortable for me at all, especially to be in a room of leaders, many of whom I didn't even know, like, could I actually be the one to lean in first? And boy, I would say every time it took a lot of guts for me to try to be the first one to share my thoughts and views. And honestly, I wasn't the first every time. I couldn't necessarily meet that level. But just challenging myself in that way really helped, because it did indeed give me permission to be more of myself, right? No matter what the environment was or venue or how nervous I might have been in that room. And I felt that I could be authentic to who I was. And what I was doing was stretching myself and growing and learning. And today, as I think about how I found my voice earlier in my career and being more comfortable and confident to be able to present myself in that room, and now that I'm in a larger leadership role, I challenge myself to do less speaking, more listening. I want to give the room a chance to have all the voices heard and valued. So this idea of finding your voice, I think, can absolutely change as you work through your career, through different roles and jobs. And I think that the truth of it is you anchor yourself in the authenticity of it, right? Don't feel like you have to change yourself, but find ways to be more of who you are, no matter what the environment might be.
Oh, I love your authenticity and your bravery too. The courage to speak first, as you just said. That can be tough for some people. And I know it takes a while to find that for a few of us here and there. And, you've had a career now for 25 plus years. And if we talk about, quote, engineering your own soundtrack, maybe you had to switch up that playlist and pivot a little bit. My predecessor, our FY26 president, Anas Darat, her theme was embrace your story. And she would always talk about pivoting. You just have to in life sometimes. So maybe what are some of the moments that you've had where you've had to pivot or redefine yourself, your career, your trajectory? Give us an example.
Yeah, so I'd say I actually have had somewhat of a non-traditional career path. I started in materials engineering on that rotational program. I came off program into a role that was focused on coatings and alloy development for our jet engines. And it was something that was actually in my first rotation. Really enjoy the group, really enjoy the content, was excited about the projects that I was able to take a lead on. And it was only a few months after I had taken on that role, the leader of the leadership program of which I was part of actually came to me and said, hey, I'm moving on to a new role. Would you want to consider taking on this program leadership role for the rotational program? And I looked at her and I said, I appreciate the thought, but I don't see how this makes any sense. I'm educated in engineering. I found a job that I'm really excited to do and work on. And now pivoting to something that's entirely different, which actually was more in the human resources organization, even though it was still within the engineering group, just didn't seem to add up to me. And so I thanked her for the consideration and I went about my way. And about 5 months after that, she came back to me. She said, hey, I know that we've already had this conversation, but I really would at least just like you to have a conversation with the hiring manager, just to see what the role is about. And of course, during that period of time, I was thinking, well, gosh, if I was the leader of this rotational program, like I'd try to do this differently, or I can improve this for the people who are on the program, because I felt like, having just graduated from it, that there were many things that I could consider making an impact in. So I did have that conversation with the hiring manager at the time, who excited me about the opportunities that I might have in that role. And I took a leap of faith, right? It was something that none of my peers were doing. I didn't see how it could help me progress in my engineering career, but I felt like it was a role that could give me the opportunity to make an impact. And so threw my hat in the ring, competed for the role, ended up having the role, and was in that role for about 4 years. And what I would say is that I learned so much in that 4-year period that really has benefited me throughout my career that I could never have imagined, right? It's the idea of, I was able to build a network with the engineering leadership organization, because the people who are on this rotational program, their managers were the engineering management leadership, and being able to work with them to understand what skills do you need in your organization, what development do I need to focus on for our leadership program members so that they can be even more skilled to make an impact in the roles. Learning more about the different kinds of engineering roles that we offered across the big enterprise, where those engineering leaders were growing, what they were looking for in college students that we were recruiting. So really gaining a much broader understanding of the different technologies, the different skill sets, the different learnings that we needed across all of the engineering functions. Something I could never have gained continuing in the one role that I was in. In addition to that, having an opportunity to get more of a global experience. So when I was in the role, I launched our first global leadership program at our sites in Poland and India. I also launched field assignments, giving our engineers an opportunity to go out beyond our headquarters site to the field, where our engines are being used by customers, being flown off of military carriers or at international sites, so that they could experience what their products were doing, and then bring that back to be even better engineers, to be able to design even better products for our customers. So having a chance to really gain these varied experiences that I would not have expected that I would have in that role was honestly something that I've, again, carried through my career, has been hugely beneficial. After having that role though for 4 years, I had that antsy feeling that I did want to get back into engineering and back into technology. And so I did. And I moved into a new role coming out of that function in support of our development engine testing part of the business. As I have made some of these changes in my career, always being able to find roles where I can get excited about the skills that I'm learning, even if it feels non-traditional, knowing I can make an impact, right? Doing what I can to hit the ball out of the park, and then moving into roles that felt like would continue to challenge and stretch me. That's really how I've progressed, I'd say. So even beyond that, I moved into an operational role. I led one of our facilities in Germany, working on a new technology that we had patented, and now coming back into more of a customer-facing role where all of those experiences have made me even more impactful in that I can put myself in the shoes of our engineers, I can put myself in the shoes of our operations team so that we can better serve our customers and know how we can provide our products and to support and service the engines that we have out there with them in the field.
Elissa, hearing you talk, I think of one of my colleagues here at Burns and McDonnell has a toddler, and her stories are always just this path of destruction everywhere her child goes. Yours is the opposite. You have left a trail of improvement and betterment everywhere you've been. You're to be applauded for all this. I'm loving these stories. So, okay, I want to switch gears on you here, and I'm going to bring it to this year's theme for SWE for FY27. The theme is Radiate Change. What that really means, if you think about our world just changing so rapidly, whether that's life, engineering, work, SWE, all the things, the pace of change is just almost exponential. I want to help harness that change just like you've done. It's for the betterment. What do the next 75 years of SWE look like? It's not going to look like the first 75 years. And so I added radiate to this because we have an opportunity here to be big, bold, bright, and with that, unapologetic. And so as we radiate change, I can already answer this one for you, but I'm going to let you answer it. You have done all the things. I know you've mentored, you've clearly championed inclusion, you give back in your communities, you've grown in music and shared that, but I bet you've made impacts even beyond that. So maybe tell us a little bit about some of your impacts beyond your technical life. Share another story of where you've done that.
And I have to say, Kerrie, when I saw that this was the theme for this year, I just loved it. How you talk about the radiating part of change and for us to be not apologetic about it because we have such dynamic and amazing women and men part of our organization who should feel like there's no barriers to the impact that we can make in the world. And it can start small, even being able to share my story. If there's even one person that might resonate with one piece of what I've experienced in my life that might help them think more clearly about the next steps in their career, that for me just brings so much fulfillment. And I'm hopeful that we can all come to WE26 and leave that conference feeling even more empowered to be able to bring the change to the world that we live in. And so for me, I've had the honor of participating in a number of different capacities, be it a nonprofit organization that we have alignment with our company called the Good Neighbor Fund. And this is an all-employee-based nonprofit with the focused attention to our local communities and how we can best support them and meet them where they're at, knowing that our employees are more from the local communities. And it's really around helping to provide financial support and other levels of support to the smaller organizations that do the really hard work in our local communities. We, of course, have a number of much broader and bigger organizations that many of us know that are nationwide, global-wide, or whatnot, and we want to continue to support them too. But it's oftentimes the ones that are in the neighborhood corner that are making the impact in one person or one family at a time, and that's what our Good Neighbor Fund aims to do. So been really blessed to be part of that board and helping to grow that, building more employee engagement around it, and doing what we can to help serve our local communities. Beyond that, being able to work in the Girl Scouts organization as well, having been a troop leader since my daughter was in the first grade and now she's a rising senior, and seeing how we can use that organization, oftentimes very much in partnership with SWE. We just hosted an event at a local university in Maine between SWE Maine and the Girl Scouts of Maine as an outreach opportunity to bring more STEM experiences to the Girl Scouts. So using that organization and helping to give the younger girls or the younger generation an opportunity to experience things that they normally wouldn't in a day-to-day school, be it more of the outdoor camping or adventures, being it like STEM opportunities that we have been focused on here lately, and helping to empower them to become leaders in their own world and environment as well. So, beyond that, still continuing to focus on having the day-to-day interactions and coaching and mentoring. The one thing I'll also add is I've had a recent opportunity to work with the University of Southern Maine. I was brought in to help what is a smaller engineering organization compared to some of the larger universities, but have a fantastic group of women and men who had the passion and drive to try to organize around our mission at SWE. They wanted to create a space where women can work together and be a positive influence in their collegiate lives to support their professional and personal development. So I can't tell you how much personal fulfillment I've had being able to work with these amazing ladies and see them be able to now be an official SWE group. Hopefully they'll be joining us at WE26 in Boston, and seeing them grow and bring in more of the underclassmen students to be part of that community. So things like that to me really have been as rewarding, or if not more rewarding, than what I've achieved in my professional life. Because for me, it really is about finding ways to support and partner with others to help them achieve their own goals.
What an experience. You are just giving everywhere you go. And speaking of experiences, I think after this conversation, I'm more excited to be on stage with you at WE26 for our opening keynote. So maybe before I let you go, and before you let the audience go when we're in Boston together, what do you want folks to walk out of the room thinking, feeling after they leave your session? Because it's going to be thousands of people that are going to help spread your message. And what should that be?
Well, honestly, I am just truly deeply honored to have the opportunity to be part of WE26. And I know that I have been blessed in my career, and I've had an amazing journey, tremendous highs, a lot of lows. And so my only hope is that by sharing some of my experiences and learnings, that I can help connect with all of the attendees at WE26 wherever they are in their own professional and personal journeys. And I hope that they can come away with a new perspective, or just simply to even know that their experiences are shared, that they're not alone, that we are all here for each other, that we want to be here to support everyone to be able to achieve more than they may have been able to dream for themselves.
I can't thank you enough for this conversation today, Elissa. And I can't wait to hear the keynote in person. And, you've talked about engineering, your career, your trajectory, but you said something today that has so resonated to me. It's not just engineering we need. We need music to fill our souls. And so thank you for joining us today. Any parting thoughts you want to leave with our listeners today?
Again, I just appreciate the time with you, Kerrie. I can't wait for all of us to come together in Boston. You guys are going to love being in our city. It's a dynamic, vibrant city as well. So it's exciting for us to be able to host you here in Boston, and just looking forward to the time together.
Well, thank you. To our listeners, if you enjoyed today's conversation, I do hope that you'll come join us at WE26 in Boston, Massachusetts, November 5 through 7, 2026. Elissa Lee will kick off our conference as our opening keynote, and she'll be joined by tens of thousands of engineers, technologists, collegiates, leaders from around the globe. So whether you're looking for your next job opportunity at our career fair, Or maybe you just want to spend 3 days surrounded by a community that understands your journey. WE26 is going to be absolutely incredible. You can learn more and register today at we26.swe.org. I'm Kerrie Greenfelder with Burns & McDonnell's Water Division and your FY27 SWE President. From all of us at SWE, thank you for listening.